The engine was already on. The car gleamed in the garage, a promise of power. He turned the key and the day seemed ordinary, until a sharp, urgent scream cut through the air. "Don't drive!" The voice was high-pitched, desperate. A thin, dirty boy with bare feet was running toward the gate. The security guard was about to push him away, but he shouted again, his face pale with fear. "Your wife cut the brakes!" A heavy silence fell. In that instant, nothing made sense. How did this boy know? What if it was true? What happened next changed both their lives forever, and the lesson no one who was there could ever forget. The golden morning began with the sun filtering through the long curtains of the mansion. The perfectly manicured lawn glistened with dew. An imported car with a flawless paint job and gleaming chrome was parked in the covered garage. This was the pride of Arthur Jones, a millionaire businessman known for his investments and his love for cars. On that day, the driver was off. Arthur, in a light suit and a neatly adjusted tie, decided to drive to the office himself. He enjoyed the feel of the steering wheel from time to time. It reminded him of the years when he still drove his first car, long before he made his fortune. He walked across the courtyard, keys in hand, smelling the coffee from the kitchen. His wife, Clara, hadn't appeared yet. She usually spent the morning on the balcony with her phone, always taking care of important matters. As he opened the car, "Dunker," Arthur took a deep breath. The interior had the characteristic scent of new leather mixed with recent polish. He turned the key, and the gentle roar of the engine filled the space. It seemed nothing could spoil that tranquility. But fate had other plans. Suddenly a sound broke the peace, rushed footsteps on the asphalt near the gate, and then a shout. "Don't drive!" The voice was high-pitched, almost a plea for help. Arthur turned around, confused. A thin, dirty boy wearing worn clothes that were too big for him was running toward him. He couldn't have been more than 12 years old, with disheveled hair, bare feet, and a face that was pale with fear. The security guard at the booth rushed out, ready to intercept him. "Stay back!" he ordered, grabbing the boy's arm. But before they could drag him away, he shouted again, with an urgency that chilled the air. "Your wife cut the brakes!" The silence that followed seemed louder than the scream. Arthur blinked as if he hadn't quite understood what the boy was saying. The accusation was too absurd to be ignored. The guard pushed the boy back. "Get out of here," he growled. The boy struggled to get free but didn't back down. His gaze met Arthur's, a look that didn't ask for money or pity, just for him to be believed. "I saw her," he insisted. "Last night, she was in the garage." Arthur felt a strange discomfort in his chest. Part of him wanted to laugh at the situation, to call it crazy. The other part couldn't look away from the boy's desperate expression. Just then, Clara's voice cut through the moment. She appeared on the second-floor balcony, wearing a light robe, holding her phone. "What's going on?" she asked. "Who is that boy?" The boy looked up, and his expression changed. There was fear and hatred in his eyes. He took a step back, as if realizing he was exposed. "He's an intruder," the security guard replied, still holding the boy. Arthur took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Just a kid trying to get attention," he said, forcing his voice to sound firm. "Take him away." The security guard obeyed, dragging the boy away from the gate. But before he was out of sight, he turned and shouted, "You're going to get hurt, I swear." The words echoed in Arthur's mind like an annoying buzzing sound. Clara came down to the main door, adjusting her robe with a rehearsed look of concern. "What was that?" she asked, as if she knew nothing. "Nothing," Arthur replied, getting into the car and avoiding her gaze. "Just a crazy kid." She came closer and put her hand on his shoulder. "Don't worry about it," she said. "These kids make up anything for money. Go to work, honey." Arthur nodded but didn't reply. He put on his seatbelt, put the car in gear, and drove out the gate. In the rearview mirror, he saw the boy standing on the sidewalk, turning quickly, his eyes fixed on the car. The avenue was quiet. The radio was playing softly, but Arthur wasn't paying attention to the music. The boy's face kept appearing in his mind. The tone of his voice, the way he shouted, the detail about last night in the garage. How could he have made up something so specific? He tried to rationalize. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe someone had told the boy some gossip, or maybe it was just a lie. But what if it wasn't? The asphalt stretched ahead, the steering wheel firm in his hands. Yet every mile he drove seemed to increase the weight of that doubt. A shiver went up the back of his neck. He had an important meeting at the office, but his attention was far from contracts or figures. What the boy had said was too serious to be swept under the rug. Suddenly, without planning to, Arthur turned into a U-turn lane. The GPS recalculated the route, and he sped back home. When he arrived, Clara was in the garden talking on her phone. Seeing him, she frowned. "Did you forget something?" Arthur gave a controlled smile. "A document. Quick thing." He drove into the garage. The car was still warm from the drive. He knelt down discreetly, looking underneath, scanning the wheels and the visible brake system. He wasn't an expert, but nothing seemed out of place. Still, the bad feeling didn't go away. He closed the car door and took a deep breath. Maybe he needed a more professional look. Maybe that boy had planted more than a doubt. He had planted a fear. And Arthur knew that if he ignored it, he might regret it forever. Arthur closed the garage door with a slow movement. The metallic sound echoed through the space, and for some reason, it sounded heavier than usual. He hadn't seen anything wrong, but the feeling wouldn't go away. That phrase, "Your wife cut the brakes," repeated in his mind like an impossible-to-silence echo. Clara was still on the balcony on her phone, gesturing as she spoke. He walked across the garden, gave a slight wave, and went into the house to get his office briefcase. He tried to maintain his composure, but her brief, assessing look made him feel as if he were hiding something. As he got into the car and drove out the gate, Arthur took a deep breath. The street was calm, and the gentle roar of the engine filled the silence. He tried hard to think about the day's commitments, but the image of the boy kept coming up. The dirty face, the bare feet, the wide eyes, and that tone of urgency that didn't sound like a lie. With each block, flashes of recent small situations fit together like pieces of a disturbing puzzle. 3 weeks ago, Clara had cancelled a trip with him at the last minute, claiming she didn't feel well. 2 days later, he found her alone in the garage at night, saying she was sorting clothes for donation. More recently, he woke up in the middle of the night to a metallic sound coming from downstairs. Clara said it was the washing machine. Arthur had never questioned these things until now. At a traffic light, he drummed his fingers on the steering wheel, looked at the dashboard, the tachometer, the brakes, and imagined what might happen if the car suddenly stopped responding. He felt a tightness in his chest. "It's crazy," he muttered to himself. "It can't be." The light turned green, and he continued, but the drive seemed longer than ever. Deep down, he knew he wouldn't have peace until he confirmed it. 3 blocks from the office, Arthur made a sudden turn onto a side street. The GPS recalculated the route, but he had already decided. He wasn't going straight to work. He drove to a more secluded neighborhood where James, a trusted mechanic who took care of his sports cars, had his workshop. He was discreet, competent, and knew how to keep secrets. When he parked in front of the workshop, James came to meet him, wiping his hands with a cloth. "Arthur, what a surprise," he said. "I need you to take a look at the car, especially the brakes." His voice sounded more serious than he intended. "And I want you to do it now." "And without telling anyone," James frowned, realizing this was not a normal request. "All right, let's take a look." While James took the car to the hydraulic lift, Arthur stood next to a shelf full of parts, listening to the sound of tools and the smell of oil. Everything seemed to amplify his nervousness. The car was lifted, and James leaned in to examine the underside. He moved carefully, illuminating the hidden spots. Arthur didn't blink, paying attention to every gesture. time dragged on. As he waited, his mind went back to the boy. How did he know? Could he have made it up just to get attention? But if it was a lie, why choose something so specific and serious, and even involve Clara's name? And more than that look. Arthur knew the face of people who lie, and that boy didn't seem to be lying. Suddenly, James stopped what he was doing. He stayed still for a few seconds, his flashlight fixed on one spot. Then he slowly stood up. "Arthur, come here for a second," he said. Arthur approached, feeling his stomach sink. James pointed to a metallic cable near the rear wheel. "You see this?" he said, illuminating the area. "This brake cable is cut. It's not wear and tear, it's not an accident. It was a clean cut with a tool." Arthur was speechless. James continued, "And it's not just this one. Both rear cables were cut almost in half. If you were on a highway and needed to brake suddenly, you wouldn't be able to stop in time." Arthur took a step back, feeling the ground disappear for a moment. James's voice seemed distant. "Do you want me to replace everything now? I can reinforce the system, put in new parts." Arthur took a deep breath, trying to process it all. "Yes, do whatever is necessary, but don't tell anyone I was here." James nodded without asking any questions. While the mechanic worked, Arthur stepped away and leaned against the workshop wall. His hands were shaking slightly. The boy was telling the truth. And if he was telling the truth about this, he was also telling the truth about the rest, about seeing Clara in the garage, about her messing with the car. Arthur closed his eyes for a few seconds. He remembered her face on the balcony, looking down, asking, "Who is that boy?" with that tone of false surprise. Now, the question echoing was different. Why? James finished the job and handed over the keys. "All set. You can drive safely now." Arthur thanked him and paid, leaving without delay. But instead of going home or to the office, he took the avenue toward the downtown area. There was something he needed to do first. He needed to find the boy. He drove through busy areas, looking carefully. He passed by parks, street corners, places where he knew street kids usually stayed. The boy's face was etched in his memory, but Arthur knew it might be hard to find him among so many others. At the third place, he stopped. He saw a group of boys near a closed newsstand. They were sitting on the ground sharing a package of cookies. And there he was, thinner than Arthur remembered, hugging his knees, staring into space. Arthur parked and got out of the car. The boys saw him and immediately stood up, ready to run away. "Wait!" Arthur raised his hand. "I'm not going to hurt you." The boy hesitated, looking around as if weighing his chances of escaping. "I just want to talk," Arthur said, approaching slowly, "about what you told me yesterday." The boy swallowed hard. His gaze shifted between fear and relief. "So you saw I wasn't lying," he murmured. Arthur stopped in front of him, keeping his voice low. "I did, and now I need to know. How did you know?" The boy lowered his eyes, as if the story was a heavy weight to carry. Arthur noticed his hesitation and looked around. The street was busy, but the noise of the cars muffled some of the conversation. "Let's go somewhere quieter," Arthur said, gesturing toward the car. The boy took a step back. "I don't trust cars," he replied dryly. Arthur took a deep breath and pointed to a nearby diner. "All right, in there then. I just want to hear." "You out," the boy agreed with an almost imperceptible nod. They sat at a table in the back. Arthur ordered 2 sodas and a sandwich for the boy. He devoured the food with the hunger of someone who didn't know when they'd have their next meal. Only after swallowing the first few bites did he start to talk. "I was looking for a place to sleep," he said without looking at Arthur. "I walked to that fancy neighborhood because sometimes I find food in the garbage of the houses. I got to your street. It was already night." Arthur listened in silence, his fingers intertwined on the table. "I found a good spot at the back of a big garage with a high wall." The boy paused. "It was your house." Arthur felt a shiver run up the back of his neck. "I was just going to sleep there, I swear, but then I saw a woman come down the stairs and go to the car. She was looking around all the time, as if she didn't want anyone to see her. The boy took a deep breath. She had a toolbox in her hand. Arthur remained still. The description matched what Clara had said days ago, that she was organizing boxes for donation. I stayed quiet, hidden. He pointed to the space under the table as if reenacting the scene. But I could see. She knelt down and started messing with something under the car. She was working fast, as if she already knew what to do. The boy stopped, swallowing hard. She cut some parts. I heard the sound of the metal giving way. Arthur clenched his hands. "Are you sure it was my wife?" he asked in a low voice. The boy nodded. I saw her face when she stood up. She was on the phone. Then his expression grew somber. She said, "Tomorrow it's over." I didn't understand everything, but I knew it was something bad. Arthur leaned back in the chair, taking a deep breath. Every detail matched the facts. Clara in the garage, the strange behavior, the presence of the toolbox, and now the confirmation that it wasn't paranoia. "Why did you try to warn me?" he asked, in a soft tone. The boy looked away and the answer came low. "Because my parents died in an accident like that. Someone cut their car brakes. I was in the back seat." He squeezed his eyes shut, as if pushing away a painful memory. "I survived, but I couldn't save them. And when I saw her messing with the car, I knew what was going to happen." Arthur felt a weight in his chest. It wasn't just about him. It was about a boy who carried a deep trauma and still had the courage to shout at a stranger, risking being ignored or even forcibly expelled. "What's your name?" Arthur asked. "Lucas." "How old are you?" 12, I think." The boy gave a self-conscious half smile. "I was never sure. I lost my documents when I left home." Arthur was silent for a few seconds, looking at Lucas as if trying to gauge the weight of the story he carried. "Lucas, do you understand that what you did saved my life?" Arthur said slowly. The boy shrugged. "I just didn't want to see it happen again." Arthur nodded, feeling a lump in his throat. He took out his wallet, pulled out a card, and wrote his personal number on the back. "If you need anything, call me, anytime." He pushed the card toward him. Lucas looked at the paper but didn't take it immediately. "I'm not good at trusting," he said. "Neither am I," Arthur said with a half smile. That seemed to break the tension for a moment. Lucas took the card and put it in his pocket. As they left the diner, Arthur felt he couldn't just go home and act as if nothing had happened. Lucas's confirmation demanded action, but he had to be careful. Clara couldn't know he already had proof. He got in the car and drove to a place where he could think. He parked at a secluded lookout point with a view of the city. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky orange and gold. Memories of his life with Clara played like a movie. The dinners, the trips, the social events. Everything seemed perfect until he realized he might never have known the true woman he married. Now the question was no longer if she did it, but why. Arthur knew he needed more than the testimony of a street boy. He needed material evidence. Maybe the security cameras at his own house had recorded something, but if he tried to access them, he risked raising suspicion. He decided that the next step would be to confront her only when he had something to back up every word. But above all, he felt the need to protect Lucas. The boy was now involved in a dangerous situation. If Clara found out he was the source of the information, there was no telling how she would react. On the way back, Arthur looked for Lucas one more time, but the boy had already disappeared into the streets. Part of him feared he wouldn't see him again. The other part knew that they would somehow still meet. When he entered the garage at home, night had already fallen. Clara was in the living room, elegant, as if she had spent the day preparing to receive him. "You're late," she commented with a rehearsed smile. "I had a busy day," Arthur replied, putting away his keys and hiding any trace of tension. "And the car? Is everything okay?" she asked casually, but Arthur noticed a shadow of interest in her eyes. "Perfect," he lied naturally, and at that moment he knew the war had already begun, silent but real. 2 days passed since Arthur had heard Lucas's story. Since then, Life in the mansion seemed normal, but the air was filled with a silent tension. Clara acted as she always did, elegant, attentive, smiling at the right times. But Arthur no longer saw just his wife. He also saw the woman who, according to the boy, had spent the night in the garage with a toolbox. And as much as he tried, he couldn't get Lucas out of his head. That morning, Arthur made a decision. He got in the car and drove to the downtown area where he had last seen the boy. He wanted to find him before he disappeared for good. He drove through narrow streets, past plazas and street corners full of vendors. Finally, near an abandoned construction site, he saw a group of children playing with a deflated ball. Lucas was there, leaning against a graffiti-covered wall, his gaze lost. When he saw Arthur, his body tensed, but he didn't run. "Did you come back to check again?" he asked with a tired half-smile. "No," Arthur said, stopping a few feet away from him. "I came to learn more about you." The two walked to a juice kiosk, sat on a wooden bench, and Lucas accepted the cup Arthur handed him. He drank slowly, as if savoring every sip. "You said you lost your parents in an accident," Arthur began. "What happened?" Lucas rested his elbows on his knees, staring at the ground. "It was 3 years ago. We lived in a simple house on the side of the road. My dad worked in a workshop. My mum sold sweets. One day they had a fight with a man who was a customer at the workshop. He left swearing my dad would regret it." His voice got lower. "A week later, the car's brakes failed on a curve. We flipped over." Arthur was silent, allowing him to continue. "I woke up in the hospital. They told me I was lucky. They weren't." Lucas squeezed the juice cup tightly. "After that, I went to live with an uncle, but he drank and hit me, so I ran away. I thought it would be better to fend for myself." Arthur felt a pang in his chest. Lucas spoke with a strange calmness, as if he had repeated the story so many times that the pain had turned into routine. "And how do you survive?" Arthur asked. "Collecting cans, begging for food, helping at the market, anything." Lucas shrugged. "Sometimes I sleep in shelters, but I don't like it. I prefer to stay on the streets. At least I'm free." Arthur looked at the boy. There was a toughness in his eyes that didn't match his young age, a toughness forged by survival. "Do you know why I came back to talk to you?" Arthur asked. "Because you want to know if I was lying." "Not just that." Arthur rested his hands on the table. "Because I realized that if you hadn't shouted that day, I could be dead now, and no one would have discovered the truth." Lucas didn't answer, just looked away toward the street. "You don't owe me anything," he said after a while. "I did what I thought was right. Even so, I want to help." Arthur took an envelope from his pocket. "Here's some money, and if you want, I can find a place for you to stay. A safe place, food, a bed, school." Lucas frowned with suspicion. "Why?" he asked. "You don't know me." "I know enough," Arthur replied. "I know you're brave and that you didn't turn your back, even though you could have. That's more than a lot of people would do." Silence settled between them. Lucas played with the empty cup, thinking. "I don't know if I can live in a fixed place," he confessed. "I'm not used to it." "Then start slowly," Arthur said with a slight smile. "It's not about changing who you are. It's about having a choice." Lucas looked at him as if measuring the sincerity of every word. Then he put the envelope in his pocket. "I'll think about it." Arthur knew he couldn't force him, but as they said goodbye, he had the feeling that this wouldn't be the last time they met. On the way back home, an idea began to form. If he was going to confront Clara, he wanted Lucas to be protected first. He wanted to make sure nothing could happen to him. When he arrived at the mansion, Clara was in the living room, flipping through a travel magazine. "You left early," she commented without looking. "Up. I had an appointment," Arthur replied, going straight to his office. There, he opened his laptop and accessed the house's security cameras. The system saved images from the last 7 days. He fast-forwarded to the night Lucas had mentioned. His heart raced when he saw a female silhouette in the garage for a moment, holding what looked like a toolbox. The image wasn't clear, but it was enough to support the boy's story. Arthur closed the laptop and took a deep breath. The time to confront her was near. That night, before going to sleep, he thought about what Lucas had said about not having a choice. Arthur, even with all his wealth, also felt trapped, not by a lack of resources, but by the web of appearances his marriage had become. The boy survived on almost nothing, but he had something Arthur realized he lacked, the courage to act without worrying about what others thought. The next day, Arthur spent the morning planning. He didn't want a scandal, but he wanted the truth to come out. He needed a few more confirmations, and then he would make Clara face everything. Before leaving for a meeting, he sent a message to a trusted contact. "I need a safe place to host someone. It's urgent." He knew that when he took the next step, life would not be the same for him or for Lucas. Arthur woke up determined. There would be no more delays. Clara needed to be confronted, and Lucas needed to be protected before any move. Early in the morning, he called a trusted friend, Robert, who worked with social projects and had contacts with families registered for temporary foster care. In less than an hour, they had arranged everything. Lucas would stay in a safe house with people prepared to receive him, with guaranteed food and school enrollment secured. Before noon, Arthur went to pick him up. "Is this for real?" the boy asked, surprised as they walked on the sidewalk. "I won't be on the street anymore?" "No, but for now it's a temporary place," Arthur explained. "It's safe, and you'll be able to study, eat properly, and sleep without worrying." Lucas hesitated, looking at the ground. "And are you going to disappear?" Arthur smiled. "I'm not the type to forget who saved my life." With Lucas safe, Arthur went back home. Clara was in the living room, impeccably dressed, flipping through a magazine as if the world were hers. He approached her, calm, but with a look she didn't recognize. "We need to talk," he said. "About what?" she asked, raising her chin. "About the night you were in the garage with a toolbox." Her smile disappeared for a second, but quickly returned. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said. "I know you messed with the car. I know you cut the brakes." The air seemed to get thicker. Clara laughed, but without humor. "That's absurd. Who told you such a thing?" Arthur kept his eyes fixed on hers. He opened his laptop and turned the screen toward her. The image showed a woman in the dim light of the garage, kneeling beside the car. "I have images, and the mechanic confirmed it. Don't lie." Clara took a deep breath, looking away. "You don't understand," she began. "Then explain it to me," he said. The silence lasted for long seconds. "I couldn't handle a divorce. You would have left me with nothing, and I can't stand to lose. I never could." Arthur felt a chill go up his spine. The woman he had spent years of his life with was admitting right there that she had preferred to risk killing him rather than face a separation. "So you thought killing me was easier?" he said softly. Clara didn't answer. "It's over, Clara, today." The rest of the day was filled with calls to lawyers and the arrival of the police. Clara was notified, and an immediate restraining order from the residence was issued. Her expression, as she was escorted out, was a mix of anger and defeat. Arthur watched in silence. There was no more room for words. That night, he went to the house where Lucas was staying. The family greeted him. With a smile and a cup of coffee, the boy came running to him with an anxious look. "So," he asked, "is it resolved?" "It's resolved," Arthur said. "She won't look for you, and she won't be able to hurt me." Lucas relaxed, but still seemed suspicious. "Then why did you come?" Arthur sat in front of him. "Because I want you to know that I'm not going to disappear. What you did won't be forgotten. You saved me, Lucas, and that's priceless." The boy lowered his head, fidgeting with his fingers. "I just didn't want to see it happen again." "And it won't." Arthur put his hand on his shoulder. "Now you're going to study. You'll have a place to live and people to take care of you. It's not charity. It's the least you deserve." The following weeks were a learning experience for Lucas. He started attending school, discovered he liked to draw, and made friends with other children. Arthur visited him whenever he could. Sometimes he brought books, sometimes he just sat and talked about simple things. The boy, who used to be suspicious of any promise, began to believe that not everyone leaves.